hello, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to, first of all, Grégoire Bourbon, who is Deputy Head of Space Innovation at the EPFL, and he's in charge of the business development, networking, and the relationships to the ESA, and holds a master from the EPFL in microtechnology and an executive MBA in Mott from the university and EPFL. And my second guest is Didier Manzoni, Deputy CEO and General Manager of Space at APCO Technologies, responsible for the development of satellites and the launcher systems, and as well for the operation in Guayana Space Center. And he's as well a Vice President of the Swiss Space Industry Group. Didier holds a Master in Aeronautics and Space from the ESAE and worked for Dassault, Lincoln Space, and RIAC before joining APCO. And last but not least, Fabien Jourdan, who is the CEO of Astrocast and holds a Master in Energy System, worked at the EPFL in the Swiss Space Center, worked as well at the Space Exploration Institutes before founding Astrocast. I would like to ask you, Grégoire, to give us a little bit the framework. What is space? In general, we often hear the names in space, downstreams, etc. And how is Switzerland actually positioned in this world where we would think only the big countries could play a role?
Yes, good evening, Frédéric, and thanks for the introduction and the invitation for this webinar. We were there already at the beginning, already on Apollo missions to the moon with an experiment from the University of Bern, but all their contributions also came from Switzerland at that time. And very soon after, so we were a founding member of the European Space Agency, part of the first 11 countries, member states of ESA. And we are indeed a strong and recognized country now in this domain. You will not find an important mission, especially from the European Space Agency, but also using the launchers of the European Space Agency without a Swiss contribution. And that's really a key aspect. You know, we always mention, and you will have beautiful examples this evening with APCO Technologies and Astrocast. But we can mention in addition that, well, in 2 weeks from now, we will have the launch of the decade as it is presented with the James Webb Space Telescope, with an Ariane 5 rocket from French Guiana. And of course, this is possible also from the contribution from APCO Technologies on site, but also from RUAG Space, for example, with the providing of the payload fairings, so the protection of the James Webb Space Telescope. So very key contribution from Switzerland in every aspect of the space domain. And you were mentioning upstream and downstream. So of course we are known, and as we call the upstream technologies is more what you put in a satellite, how you build a satellite. So it's basically the technology that you're using to build a rocket and build a satellite to put, in fact, the infrastructure in the space environment. And what we are calling downstream is all what is about the applications. So when you're using a space infrastructure for example, weather forecast, for telecommunication, for positioning, navigation, it's all about application. It's all about downstream. And there is also, maybe we are not realizing when we are using these kind of things, that it's a very big business behind, and it's only possible with the space asset that we have in orbit.
We at APCO Technology, we are very much in the upstream and in the very large satellites. So, and it is clear that we have a kind of balanced world at the moment between the two, let's say, issues of having the security coming from space. And when I speak about security, it's a very wide expression. I mean the environment with the climate. I mean the survey of the catastrophe. I mean also military application also to protect our security. And this is provided by an infrastructure of very large satellites all over the world, all around in different orbits, also securing the navigation and the telecommunication. And this you get by, you can guarantee this overall security, I mean, by satellites and by an infrastructure in orbit at different levels, geostationary if you want to have a spot on Earth, or in LEO orbit if you want to cover the planet in a much more refined way.
Something we could mention typically is how scientists, so Didier talked about climate change, and I think we can definitely play a role in that. Before you act, before you plan locally some strategy to fight climate change or to try to anticipate the changes that are happening, the first thing you have to do is to measure. And you can do, of course, remote sensing from large satellites, even smaller satellites, allows you to get the big picture, and is a gold mine of information to study how the Earth is, how the atmosphere is evolving. But what we also realize is that at a more local level in remote areas, you need to have more granularity, and you need to get data directly from sensors on the ground. So we're supporting, for example, scientists deploying network of sensors on the ice caps on the North Pole or in glaciers. We're helping companies who have large infrastructures in these remote areas also to do a predictive maintenance. Because of climate change, you see a lot more risks involved in the lifetime of these infrastructure, and they need to predict and they need to better maintain it. So by connecting these infrastructure efficiently, we're talking about water distribution, oil and gas, maritime infrastructure, whether it's fixed or mobile, we can really play a role in this idea of better connecting the better monitoring the infrastructure. I would like to mention another example of how we can help, we can impact day-to-day life of everyone. Ultimately, when our constellation is complete, we will have a latency that is lower, and this allows us to offer SOS messaging, for example. So if you go hiking in the Alps and you break your leg, or if you go kayaking in the middle of nowhere and you have a problem, you can send a panic or SOS message. We call that panic button application. There are many of them for personal device or in cars, or you can even dream of a Swiss knife that is connected through satellite. So we're working on all these long-term goals that will really impact people. But right now, our business is really mostly big companies having large infrastructures and looking to connect these infrastructures.
Gregor, you have a kind of overall view on the space industry. How is your perception? Do you think people understand the impact that space can have on Earth?
Yeah, I think it's a very key point because, first of all, I said before, roughly 200 million Swiss francs are spent in the space at ESA, and it's public money. So we have to explain, and we supported our federal administration in explaining why we're spending this money and why space. And indeed, it's not just playing with rocket. We are doing space, of course. Exploration is in human DNA, that's clear. But space is really in our daily life. You see plenty of examples. You hear plenty of examples coming from Didier and Fabien. Well, if you have a look at weather forecasts, when you follow your navigation system, when you're watching live the football World Cup final, or when you withdraw money at the ATM, it's all there is space behind. So it's embedded in our daily life. The importance to explain that, to try to outreach public event to explain this. It's part also of our job. And as I said before, also it will have, in addition, a very strategic position for the future. I said space is contributing to UN SDGs. The climate is one example, and I think we can go even further, saying that we will probably not reach these SDGs without space assets. So Fabien mentioned the aspect of being global. That's a key aspect for space. We are orbiting the Earth in 1 hour and 30 minutes. If you're in low Earth orbit, as Didier said, if you're in geostationary orbit, you're always on the same spot. You can really see the differences over time. So it's a way of being global very fast, and all this data will open a very broad range of applications. So very important for our daily life.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think you mentioned something important is the money. I mean, today, I think every day we hear something from Elon Musk and SpaceX and this kind of companies which are more private. And so I know that, Didier, you don't like when we talk about, it's a bit provocative, old space versus new space, but can you tell us a little bit what is the difference first, and how these two industries that I think the tendency is to try to consider them as two different, but actually they are more linked than we think.
First of all, I think it's certainly not a good idea to think that both are in competition. Both are complementary. It's clear that they are not structured and functioning the same way. It's also not correct to think that a company like SpaceX is a pure private company. This is not at all the case. I mean, it's public, it's known that 75 or 80% of the sales of SpaceX is public market. They have a very captive market from the NASA and the DoD. And when you have 80% of your revenues, which are insured by public money, of course, you have a different situation. And in Europe, unfortunately, we are not at all in this constellation. And we have to fight to be more innovative. And to be more innovative means to take advantage of the startups, which is usually what we think when we speak about new space, but also of the old space, of the companies, the industrial companies, working more, I have to say, on the upstream than on the downstream, but it starts to change. But both of them have a very big potential of innovation. In one side, startups very often employ people which are just graduated. In the old space, you have much bigger money in terms of investment capabilities. You have also a more stable situation in terms of funds. And so it's a combination of both that will bring the space industry for further and more competitive in general. So you need really both, and they are not in competition. Sometimes, of course, it can be the case, but usually they rather work together. And we at APCO, for example, we are financing masters. We are working with startups. We sometimes propose projects together. So there is this dynamics, which is really good. And this is new, I would say, new. Let's say I started 35 years in space, but I would say this wind of change started, let's say, 10 years ago, but you see the acceleration the last 5 years.
Thank you. Fabien, would you like to add something?
Yeah, fully agree with what Didier just said. It's very impressive to see what happened during the past 10, 15 years. Another element that has been very clear from our perspective, we are coming from the nanosatellite world, and I think the standardization of small satellites have been initially a fantastic tool to create new ideas, to involve even students. I was a student who was trained on the first CubeSat standard that was released in the early the 2000. I think it was even 1999, and this has been a fantastic way to support also this new space movement, creating new innovation from the universities and then young companies. And now some of these small startups have taken off, and they really have a significant role in the space industry.
I'd like to give you some time to answer the questions, but before we do that, I'd like to ask you one last one. How do you see space in 10 years? So what will be the next tendencies? What will be the next hypes in a few years now?
We are facing some challenges in terms of climate. I say that at the beginning. We are facing challenges in terms of security, and we are facing challenges in terms of connectivity between the people. And so space has to respond to these three challenges. But of course, this means more satellites. This means more launchers. This means also reducing the price to be in orbit. This means also a change in mentality in terms of sharing the data. This means also on ground, a lot of challenges in terms of treating the data, because bringing to Earth terabytes of data is something, but at the end, you have to do something with this data. Mm-hmm. And when we speak about security, for example, you better have some artificial intelligence already embarked in your satellites, or else you will be completely flooded over data that you cannot manage at the end. And this is one of the big challenges. How can we manage on ground with all the space data coming from the different satellites? And then in turn, as I have seen one of the questions, although space is large and big, how do we make sure that there is no impact between satellites or debris that will impact our satellites and that might pollute a full orbit, which could be really a catastrophe depending which orbit is polluted. So this is also a challenge. We are working at APCO on this together with ClearSpace on Adrios, which will be the first chaser of debris. And this is a program which is very important in order to simply to make the people aware about the risks.
The question is very interesting because I can tell you that 5 years ago, I would have not say that a Swiss company would have been listed they're doing an IPO, and I would have emit some doubts about Starlink constellation. Because this mega constellation was in projects, but not really live at the moment. And now we see almost 2,000 satellites from Starlink, and this brings exactly to what Didier said. The future, the challenge is coming now is really about managing this. Of course, we will need we need satellites, we need information, we need this constellation, but we have to do it on a wise manner, and that will be a very important, a key challenge there in the future. And again, as you said, Switzerland is positioned there with the initiative ClearSpace, and well, that will be also the responsibility on our side in the future to do that.
I think we all have a role to play as whether we are nanosatellite operators or larger satellites operators. We all have to take this very seriously and find a way to keep some good practice in space.
So a last quick question: how do we position ourselves, Switzerland, and maybe more the region? Do you feel that will play a role in the future, and how can we position ourselves?
All around us, we have countries which have a massive help of the states due to the COVID in order to boost their industry and to boost especially their space industry. So the President Macron has announced 1.5 billion of support to the space industry. It will be more or less the same in Germany, and so on and so on. So in our case, if we want to be able to fight against them, we have only one possibilities to be more innovative and to differentiate with our solution from the others.
Something also very important especially for the startups and the new space companies that are in creation or start to grow. We need to. This is maybe true also for other fields, but in space in particular, I can tell you, because we were the first to really try to look for venture capital in Switzerland for a pure space play, I would say, and it was difficult. It was hard. So we should continue to educate the VC community about the potential of space and how space is done, and the benefit for Switzerland to be well positioned in that race. We're talking about, if you look at the US, the massive amount of venture capital is invested in all these new space startups, and we can do better, I think, and we should continue to educate the VC community.
Yeah, I think surprisingly, this year will be a very fantastic year for VC in Switzerland, and more specifically in Vaud. We nearly will double the amount of investment in the canton this year, probably. So hopefully we'll go in the right direction. So I would like to thank you all for being here today with us. Thank you for my guests here, and thank you for the EPFL, and wish you all a very good day, and goodbye.